Welcome back to Catalyst University. My name is Kevin Tokoff. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for future videos and notifications. And a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon for your contributions to my channel. In the previous video, we introduced the cervicogenic headache and talked about a basic mechanism that causes it. Now we want to go in more detail and talk about how to identify it and also some treatments, not all of them, that can be used to help the cervicogenic headache. Now here's some common symptoms right here. We'll be going into a lot more detail at the end of the video, but this is some basic stuff right here. People with a cervicogenic headache are going to have decreased active range of motion, particularly in cervical extension, so bending the neck backward to look up at the ceiling. But they may also have some active range of motion restrictions in rotation as well. The person may also have joint dysfunctions and be painful to palpation in the region between the atlanto-occipital joint and this joint between C3 and C4. Now, why does this not include the lower cervical spine? What if somebody had pain to palpation, or a joint dysfunction around C6? Well, remember that a cervicogenic headache involves this structure called the trigeminal-cervical nucleus. All of this we covered in a previous video, so make sure to search for that on the channel or look in the description of this video. Remember that the trigeminal-cervical nucleus collects sensory information, particularly pain sensory information, from the head, and also in this region between C1 and C3, which is where those suboccipital muscles are. All of this nociceptive information, either from C1 to C3 or from the head, is coming into the trigeminal-cervical nucleus and then being relayed to the brain. The brain then analyzes that nociceptive input and creates an output, which can include a headache. And so the basic idea is that because all this information right here is being fed into the same structure going to the same part of the brain, sometimes the brain basically confuses where the pain's coming from. It thinks the pain is actually coming from the head, when in reality, it's actually coming from the region of the cervical spine between C1 and C3. The individual might also have issues with strength impairments, really endurance, with the deep cervical flexors or deep neck flexors. One way we can identify these issues is with something called the craniocervical flexion test, which we covered in a previous video. There's another similar test called the deep neck flexor endurance test. They're based on the same principles, using the same muscles, but they're applied in a different way. And if either of those tests are positive, that's indicative that the person may have a cervicogenic headache. The reason why these three things are important here, these common symptoms or conditions, is that these are not present in migraines and they're not present in tension headaches. Okay? So if you have these three things right here, it makes it more likely that the headache is cervicogenic. And I don't need to mention that obviously one of the symptoms would have to be a headache. Now let's get into the various treatments and understand that these are not the only ones that you can use, but these are some of them that are actually backed up by evidence. The first two are going to be types of manual therapy. Number one, we can do low velocity or high velocity mobilizations that target the patient's specific range of motion or mobility restrictions. Remember, one of those symptoms is that they're probably going to have decreased cervical extension active range of motion, possibly restricted either due to joint dysfunction or to pain. They may also have cervical rotation restrictions as well. And so we can do mobilizations to specifically address those. And by mobilizations, I'm specifically referring to grades 1 through 4. Another thing that can be used is the rotational manipulation, which you see down here in the picture, specifically if the person's rotation is limited, which it often is. Remember, with manipulations, these are low amplitude, high velocity thrusts. The general guideline is you first do it once and listen for an audible cavitation. If you can hear the cavitation, you're done. You don't need to do it anymore. If you don't hear the cavitation, you do the manipulation a second time, and regardless of whether or not you hear it or not, after the second one, you're done. Remember, you don't do manipulations a lot, 1 or 2 at the most. And you don't need an audible cavitation for the treatment to be effective. So mobilizations, manipulations that specifically target their range of motion impairments. Then we can do what's called a suboccipital release. Patients love this. Remember that those suboccipital muscles tend to be tight in individuals with a cervicogenic headache. And those are these muscles right here near that posterior upper cervical spine. all you basically do is you have the patient lying in supine, and you take your fingers, generally on each side you're going to use your index finger and middle finger, and you basically just find the suboccipital muscles, and the patient rests their head such that those suboccipital muscles are lying on the fingers. Okay? It's the same principle as if you're trying to release the upper traps, except the upper traps are really big, right? So you got to really knead into them with your fingers or your hands. But these muscles are so tiny that you don't need to knead into them. All you have to do is let the weight of the patient's head drive those muscles into your fingers right there, and that's enough to release them. So that's all this is. This is just a miniature version of, let's say, an upper trap manual release. This is a really relaxing technique for the patient, so generally what I'll do is I'll have the lights out and I'll just let them sit there like this for about 2 minutes. You also want to give an exercise or a stretch that matches the therapy. So to match the suboccipital release, we can also give a suboccipital stretch. Remember, generally the issue is going to be in too much cervical protraction. So for this stretch, you can see this guy is kind of pushing on his chin and helping it to go into retraction, kind of giving a little bit of a double chin right there, but at the same time, he's got his other hand on his occiput back here, and he's helping to stretch the suboccipital region on the back side. So this would be a suboccipital stretch. Also notice from this plane, he also has his neck tilted to one side slightly. So you can do this with his head tilted to the left, and then repeat also with the head tilted to the right. Now, particularly in a patient with excessive cervical protraction, the suboccipitals will be tight, but those deep neck flexors will be weak. And so one of the other things we want to do is strengthen those deep neck flexors. Right here you actually see a demonstration of the deep neck flexor endurance test, which is technically a test, but you can also do it as a treatment. So we want to do low load endurance activities to train these muscles. Remember, the deep neck flexors, those are not like the quads. Okay, when you do quads, you want to train those. You do squats, you do leg press, you got to do high load. These deep neck flexors are endurance muscles, so we need to train them like endurance muscles. We're not going to rep it out. We're just going to get in this position and hold it. Okay, they're endurance muscles. Train them as such. So you can do seated cervical retraction. That's where it's gravity minimized. That's a little bit easier. So you just are in seated and you're doing this same movement, actively retracting the cervical spine. But you can also do it in supine like this. Now you're doing it against gravity, makes it a little more difficult. So the deep neck flexor endurance test can also be a treatment, and you can have specific target times for the person to get to. A couple muscles here are also typically weaker in patients with a cervicogenic headache. Those would be the serratus anterior and also the lower traps. And so right here you see a demonstration of a serratus wall walk. Basically, the person's going to have a TheraBand going around both wrists, and they're going to pull against it. So this left arm will be going toward you, toward the screen. The right one, which you can't see, is going into the screen, just a little bit to get some tension there. And then the patient is pushing into the wall right here through their forearms, but they're doing so through scapular protraction. Okay? And then while they're maintaining the tension in the TheraBand and maintaining active scapular protraction, they're one at a time walking those arms up the wall, and then they'll walk them down while maintaining those two things, tension in the TheraBand and active scapular protraction. That's a serratus wall walk. For people who are a little more trained, maybe a little younger, maybe they're athletes with a cervicogenic headache, you can also do this with a weight. So the key here to strengthen the serratus would be, while you're doing this movement, it's not just simply shoulder flexion. You want to make sure you're also engaging the serratus anterior by engaging those scapular protractors. Okay? We can also strengthen the lower trapezius. Right here you see a prone lower trap raise. Typically you'll do this starting with one arm at a time. The arm that you're doing is dangled off the side like this, and then you're basically just lifting that arm up basically to parallel to the floor. You can see the person's thumb right here should be pointed up at the very end of the movement. Okay? Just to give you some perspective, the arm's actually coming up like this. So it's not coming up directly at the side, Okay? That would be working more the middle traps. It's actually coming up kind of into this upper quadrant right there. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And just like with serratus anterior, we can also work the lower traps with resistance or a weight, again, for someone who's a little more trained, maybe an athlete, a younger person, someone who can do this type of exercise. And you'll basically have the rope attachment right here, that attachment where the rope sort of bifurcates into two other ropes, one rope in one hand, one in the other. And the patient basically is just going to pull them just at the level of the ears or maybe a little above the ears like that. Okay? And that works the middle and lower traps. The thing you want to make sure that the patient does while they're doing this movement is you want to make sure that they're not bringing their neck forward. You want to make sure that they're actually engaging the cervical retractors to help maintain, at the very least, a neutral neck. We don't want it going into protraction while they're doing this. And the same thing is actually true of the serratus wall walks and these as well. We don't want that neck coming forward into protraction. We want to maintain, at the very least, neutral. Now, just as important as therapeutic exercise is actually the postural education. We want to educate the patient on sitting with a neutral spine. One way we can start doing this is by training scapular retraction, also called scapular adduction. You can do this without a TheraBand. You can really just have them engage the retractors, bring the shoulder blades or the scapulas together, and then you can progress this to using a TheraBand. This is something that's really applicable to a lot of different conditions. Shoulder impingement, rotator cuff, really engaging those scapular retractors with rows like this. Okay? So in rows, yeah, you're using your arm and shoulder muscles, but you're also engaging the scapular retractors. These are really good. You want to also make sure that their neck is not protruding forward. You want to make sure it's maintained in neutral, like you see right here, while they're going through the movement. And then just generally sitting with less cervical protraction throughout the day. This right here, this posturing on the left, if they have a cervicogenic headache, this is likely what's contributing to it. Because remember, in this position of the neck where it's protruding or protracting too much, you're not engaging the deep neck flexors, so they're getting weak, and then the suboccipital muscles are overworked and also getting tight. And the overworking of those muscles, they're becoming ischemic over time. They're good at endurance, but not that good. And so that's what causes that pain to refer to the head through that trigeminal-cervical nucleus. So just generally strategies to help engage the deep neck flexors, but to more stretch or elongate the upper cervical spine, particularly those suboccipital muscles. And what the evidence suggests here is that you can do manual therapy, and that helps. You can do therapeutic exercise, that helps. But if you do them both, it's much better. And in a typical session, probably about 30 minutes of combined treatment of all of these should actually be enough. So now, here's some important things to look out for when you're identifying a cervicogenic headache. Remember that we're attributing the headache to abnormalities in the upper cervical spine through that trigeminal-cervical nucleus. So we're not going to expect this to be caused by abnormalities around the levels of C6, C7, even C5. We're looking mainly up around C1 through C3, okay? And that's because those are the only 3 levels of nerves that are going to be able to refer into the head. That being said, the headache is going to be affected by cervical movements and prolonged posturing, as we've talked about. And in general, the headache is going to be mostly occipital. It's going to be pain in the back of the head, but it can radiate into the top of the head and the face. That will generally be unilateral, but you're looking more for pain in the back of the head. And about 70% of people that suffer from headaches also complain of neck pain that's associated with their headache. Remember, we're looking at the cervical spine, so there's probably going to be pain there, but also pain in the head, the headache. And in general, about 14 to 18% of chronic headaches are cervicogenic, and 15 to 20% of recurrent headaches are cervicogenic. Now for some red flags, things to look out for that might be signs of an intracranial pathology. A sudden onset of the headache. Headache comes on all of a sudden and it's really severe, like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 pain. That could be a sign of a dissection, a cervical artery dissection. So watch out for that. Persistently unilateral headaches. that could be a sign potentially of something that's within the brain that's compressing something, or potentially compressing a nerve, always on one side. Headaches that wake the patient during the night or early morning. Obviously, those are red flags. Generalized stiff neck or other signs of meningitis. Systemic symptoms, weight loss, fever, malaise. And then focal neurological symptoms or signs. These are going to be more indicative of a neurodegenerative condition, particularly in its early stages. Okay. Now, most of this we've hit already in the past, so I'll just cover the high points. Number one, women are much more likely to experience a cervicogenic headache than men, about 4 times more likely. So that's something to keep in mind for the patient population. The patient may also have active trigger points, particularly in the suboccipital muscles or the region of the upper traps that are near C1 through C3. And so there's a lot of evidence that dry needling can actually be used to attack those trigger points, help them calm down, and then that will in turn get rid of the cervicogenic headache because the trigger point is actually playing a large role in referring that pain to the head. Now, other than reduced joint mobility in the upper cervical spine, there's a few other tests here that tend to be positive for those with a cervicogenic headache. The last two we've already mentioned. Those are the craniocervical flexion test and this last one, which is another name for the deep neck flexor endurance test. They're not going to be able to hold those positions very long because they have weak, deep neck flexors. And so these can also be used as a treatment. Just hold the position and strengthen via endurance those deep neck flexors. And then they may also have a positive cervical flexion rotation test. We'll be covering that in a separate video. So hopefully this video gave you a good understanding of how to identify a cervicogenic headache and some treatment options for helping those symptoms. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and check out my Instagram for cool science and not science stuff.